The roles of the presidents. Chief Executive Dwight D. Eisenhower used his authority to enforce laws, policies, and to run the White House. He created the positions of National Security Advisor and Chief of Staff. Through the Eisenhower approach to leadership, he met with the Cabinet and National Security Council on a weekly basis. His military background and knowledge helped him while in office, especially in areas like foreign affairs. He worked with his Secretary of State very often to create new and better policies, and he also made appointments with the Supreme Court. He used his military expertise to gain support as a chief executive and was very successful in performing his duties as chief executive. President Carter served well as chief diplomat during his tenure in the Oval Office. The most famous example was the Camp David Accords. 30 years before Carter was president, Israel and its neighbors experienced 4 wars and continuing conflict. Jimmy Carter met with President Anwar al-Sadat and Prime Minister Menachem Begin of Israel at a resort called Camp David to negotiate peace. The peace settlement planned to create a role for the Palestinian people in governing the West Bank and Gaza Strip, which were 2 heavily contested areas. He also made other deals regarding other Middle Eastern countries. This is still considered one of the most far-reaching efforts to create peace in the Middle East. Abraham Lincoln was responsible for shaping and defining national policy. He believed that war was the way to reach his political goals at the time and an instrument of policy. Lincoln's top priority as commander-in-chief was to keep border states in favor of the Union. He believed that if he lost those states, he would lose the fight for emancipation. After a few months, his policy changed, and instead of trying to defer to the border states, he directly fought slavery through the Emancipation Proclamation. He believed that emancipation was a military necessity and was necessary to preserve the Union. He took away a Confederate resource and turned it around to their advantage. He then began organizing black regiments to fight and armed nearly 50,000 black soldiers. The black regiments turned out to be extremely useful in battles such as the Battle of Fort Wagner. He appointed noble generals, and through this he won the fight for emancipation and freed slaves, making him one of the best commander-in-chiefs that America will ever see. William Taft was a great legislative leader, passing and vetoing bills that he thought were best for the people, such as the Payne-Aldrich Tariff Act. This established the tariff board and also reduced the tariff. Postal Savings Bank Act allowed 1 bank per state to give 2% interest on accounts with less than $500 in them. Children's Bureau and the Department of Commerce. This was to monitor child welfare. The Organic Act of the Department of Labor, creating the United States Department of Labor. Taft wasn't afraid to take risks and did what he thought was best. Head of State Barack Obama is ranked the best head of state according to Forbes. He leads the list ahead of some of the best presidents and most powerful people due to his control over financial resources, his active use of power, and his influential power over many people and areas. Franklin Delano Roosevelt is clearly one of the best economic leaders this country will ever see. He was sworn in as president at the pinnacle of the Great Depression and immediately took action to end it. He launched deals like the New Deal almost immediately once he was in office. He ran off a platform to end the Great Depression, rallying Americans because the president before him, President Hoover, actually worsened the economy while he was in office. He was responsible for getting us out of the Great Depression, and he also created Social Security, U.S. minimum wage, child labor laws, and insurance on bank deposits. He impacted and essentially saved our economy. George W. Bush wanted to reestablish the Republican Party as the natural party of the government under his position as party leader. He was the first party leader since FDR to increase his majorities in both houses of Congress after winning re-election. The best way to reinforce your party is to build a strong party base in Congress, and his support rate in the Senate was 92% and 84% in the House during his terms, the highest out of every president, meaning Congress nearly supported everything he passed and did. The Republicans supported him throughout his terms in office, and he led his party well.